They say if you listen closely, the dolls will speak, not in voices loud and clear, but in whispers, secrets, warnings, pleas, and on a tiny island south of Mexico City, they never stop whispering. In the heart of the ancient Xochimilco canals lies something that shouldn't exist. Not in this world. A place where forgotten toys hang from trees like silent sentinels, their eyes crack, their limbs missing, their mouths open as if trying to scream. This is not a children's playground. This is La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. And what began as one man's obsession has twisted into something far more chilling. The island has no electricity, no roads, no running water, just murky canals and the sound of paddles slicing through black water. Locals avoid it at night. Some won't even speak its name, but it wasn't always this way. Before the dolls, before the horror, there was just a man named Don Julián Santana Barrera, a recluse, a man who fled the city, searching for peace among the canals. But what he found was a story the world would never forget. Let's go back to the 1950s. Don Julián was a quiet, deeply religious man, tired of society, tired of noise. He chose isolation. He moved to a small chinampa, a floating garden in the wetlands of Xochimilco. There he planned to grow food, live simply, pray, heal. But legends say something else found him first. One day, while walking along the edge of his island, Don Julián discovered something in the canal, the lifeless body of a young girl. Her name is lost to time. No official records, no funeral, just a drowned child, claimed by the water. Her story should have ended there, but beside her, tangled in the reeds, floated a single doll, and Don Julián took it as a sign. He hung the doll from a tree, perhaps to honor her spirit, or maybe to ward it off. He claimed he could hear her crying at night, that she wasn't at peace, that she wanted more. So he gave her more. He began to collect dolls, old, broken, rotting dolls. He found them in garbage piles, traded food for them, even pulled them from the canals themselves. Some had no eyes, others were burned, all of them looked wrong. He didn't clean them, didn't fix them, he nailed them to trees, hung them from fences, stuffed them into crevices in the wooden huts. Every corner of the island soon watched you. Locals say he spoke to them, sang to them, prayed over them. What started as a shrine became an obsession, then a curse. Children claim they've heard the dolls whisper their names. Tourists report the sound of footsteps in the night. On an island where no one lives, dolls change positions, eyes open and close, cameras malfunction, and the story of the little girl becomes harder to verify with each passing year. Some say she never existed at all, that Don Julián went mad, that isolation broke him. But what about the others who've heard the voices? What about the hundreds of dolls still hanging, each with its own story, its own face, its own whisper? As we begin our descent into this mystery, remember this: not every ghost is seen. Some are heard, and some are sewn into the fabric of cloth and plastic. Waiting, watching, whispering, stay close. The secrets of the dolls are just beginning to wake. It always begins with a death, sometimes an accident, sometimes something darker. But the island of the dolls doesn't just look haunted. It was born out of tragedy. At the center of the island's origin is one tale, disturbing, elusive, and impossible to fully confirm. The story of a little girl who drowned in the canal. Her spirit said to haunt the place to this day. According to Don Julián himself, he discovered the child's body, tangled in the lily-covered waters near his chinampa. The canal was silent. The girl's face was pale, and as he pulled her from the water, he heard something behind him, a soft splash, a faint giggle, and then, floating toward him, a doll, old, waterlogged, its hair matted, its porcelain face chipped, one eye missing. This was no coincidence, he believed. This was a sign. A message from beyond. Now here's where it gets strange. There are no police reports, no missing child bulletins, no official confirmation that a little girl drowned on the island during that time. Some locals swear the girl was real. Others claim Don Julián imagined her, driven to delusion by loneliness. But from that moment, everything changed. He told neighbors he could hear the girl crying at night, that her soul wandered the island, that the doll had been hers, and she wanted it back. At first, the villagers thought nothing of it. Julián was a quiet man, deeply spiritual, a little eccentric maybe, but harmless. Then, he started to collect more dolls. He would row for hours through the canals, scouring trash piles and markets. He didn't want new toys. He wanted abandoned ones, broken ones. The more damaged, the better. He believed these dolls held spirits. He believed they could protect him, or at least distract her. Soon the trees filled with limp plastic limbs. Doll heads dangled from string. Their cracked smiles mocked the wind. Neighbors noticed something else. Julián stopped farming, stopped speaking with people. He would spend hours staring at the trees, as if listening. Sometimes, he'd whisper back. Children from nearby villages dared each other to paddle close to the island. They said the dolls turned their heads when you looked away, that they blinked. Some swore they heard a child's laughter echoing across the water when no children were near. Years passed, and Don Julián became less a man and more a myth. People feared what he had summoned, or what had taken hold of him. They say grief can drive a man to madness. But what if it wasn't madness at all? What if Don Julián was telling the truth? What if that girl's spirit never left, and the dolls were the only thing keeping her satisfied? Even today, the story remains fractured. Some say the girl was an apparition he imagined, an embodiment of guilt or trauma. Others insist they've seen her, heard her, felt her watching from beneath the trees. What's undeniable is this. That moment, whether real or imagined, triggered something irreversible. A single dog floated out of the canal, and the island was never the same again. Because sometimes a tragedy doesn't end with a death. Sometimes it begins there. There's a fine line between tribute and obsession. Don Julián Santana didn't just hang a few dolls on trees. He transformed the island into something unrecognizable. An altar, a shrine, a grotesque museum of decaying toys. And somewhere along the way, he changed too. At first, it might have seemed like a coping mechanism. A man haunted by a girl's ghost, trying to find peace through small rituals. But those rituals grew darker, stranger. He didn't just collect dolls, he sought them. Every week, Don Julián would paddle his canoe deep into the winding canals, searching for lost and discarded dolls, not to fix them, not to play with them, but to offer them intact or broken as gifts to the dead. He believed the spirits of the dolls acted as guardians, or maybe distractions. Maybe if he gave them enough, she would stop whispering. Locals began to notice his obsession consuming him. They'd see him digging through garbage, pulling limbless toys from filthy water. He never flinched, never hesitated. It was as if the more disturbing the doll, the more powerful it became. He strung them from the trees with wire, nailed them to walls, wedged them between branches dangling over paths like silent watchmen. Some were headless, some burned, some covered in mold, dirt, insects. He didn't clean them, didn't sanitize them. He said they were meant to be that way, that the uglier they were, the better they protected the island. One visitor asked why he didn't restore them. He answered flatly, "Spirits prefer what's broken." Some believe Julián was just unraveling, his isolation spiraling into madness. But others, those who knew him best, saw something deeper. They said he began speaking in tongues during the night, carving crude symbols into trees, pouring out small offerings, corn, flowers, even blood from his fingers. Was it superstition, or was he communicating with something the rest of us can't see? His family visited him less and less. He pushed them away. Even they admitted something was wrong with him, something watching him, changing him. Then came the stranger details. A doll in particular was said to move locations when no one was looking. Another was found with human hair woven into its scalp. Some had tiny scratches on their plastic faces, like claw marks. Others seemed to appear from nowhere. One night, a neighbor paddled past and claimed he saw Don Julián standing motionless in the water, waist deep, surrounded by dolls, all of them staring at him, none of them swaying in the wind. Tourists who dared to approach the island in those years reported feeling dizzy. Some heard crying, others claimed to hear laughter, but not from Don Julián. They said it came from the trees. The shrine had become a prison, and the man, its warden. But the most unsettling part? He wasn't afraid, he welcomed it. He once told a passing fisherman, "The dolls speak to me now. I understand their language." This was no longer a man haunted by a single spirit. This was a man who had crossed into something else, who had become part of the island itself. The rituals, the obsession, the whispers. They weren't symptoms, they were signs. Signs that something ancient, something unseen, had taken root there. And it fed on offerings made of plastic, cloth, and fear. Something shifted on the island. What started as a tribute became a sanctuary for shadows, and those who dared to visit didn't leave untouched. It wasn't just the dolls that unnerved people. It was what they did when no one was looking. Visitors began to report strange sensations the moment they stepped onto the island. A heaviness in the air, a pressure in the chest, like being watched by hundreds of unseen eyes. But the dolls were watching. Cracked glass pupils, some missing entirely, others smeared with dirt, yet they always seemed aware. Multiple tourists swore the dolls moved ever so slightly when they weren't looking. They'd glance away, then back again, and the head was tilted differently. A missing eye now staring directly at them. A limb that had been hanging limp now twisted just so. Some saw a mouth slightly open, gaps appearing where there had been none. Others claimed their cameras refused to work. Photos taken on the island appeared corrupted, blurry faces, distorted shadows, or worse, figures in the background that hadn't been there. One man took a picture of a tree with 5 dolls. When he developed it, there were 6, and the 6th had no face. Locals say that at night, if you float past the island quietly, you can hear them. The whispers. Not wind, not trees rustling, but voices. Small, raspy, childlike. They don't say words, they just hum. That slow, off-key rhythm you hear in old music boxes, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in the living world. Don Julián told people the dolls spoke to him, that they warned him of spirits in the water, that they whispered secrets too dark to repeat. At first, people dismissed it, until they started hearing the whispers too. A group of college students who camped nearby returned home shaken. They claimed one doll turned to face them as they lit their fire. Another was found sitting inside their canoe the next morning. They didn't hear it move. They didn't see it walk, but somehow it had traveled 20 feet from the tree to their boat without a sound. Some encounters were worse. A woman visiting from Canada fainted after reportedly hearing a doll call her by name. A local boatman swears he saw a pair of tiny wet footprints appear on the wooden dock, with no one around. Even seasoned skeptics walked away disturbed. It's not the fear you feel in haunted houses or horror films. It's something deeper. The primal knowledge that you're not alone, and that something small is watching. One spiritual healer from Mexico City visited in the early 2000s. He stayed for only 20 minutes. When he returned, he wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, wouldn't stop staring. His only words came 2 days later. That place is claimed. It's as if the dolls aren't just cursed objects. They're vessels for sorrow, for loneliness, for something far older than any little girl's ghost. They don't need to scream. They whisper. And somehow, that's so much worse. In stories like these, there's always a final chapter. But sometimes the ending is more terrifying than the legend itself. Don Julián Santana, caretaker of the dolls, keeper of the whispers, died in 2001. But it's how he died that turned myth into something much darker and raised one question no one could answer. Was it fate, or was it the island itself? For over 50 years, Don Julián lived alone with the dolls. No electricity, no running water, just him, the wind, and hundreds of frozen plastic faces. In the final weeks of his life, something changed in him. He told his nephew that the spirits were no longer whispering, they were screaming. He said the girl's voice had returned, that she wanted him. He grew paranoid, agitated. He claimed he saw her reflection in the water, her eyes staring up from beneath the surface. Then, one afternoon, it happened. Don Julián's body was found floating in the exact same spot where he claimed the little girl had drowned 50 years earlier. Face down, limp, surrounded by dolls. Some said it was a stroke. Others say it was his heart. But those who knew him whispered a different explanation. The island took him. The coincidence is chilling. Same location, same still water, same silent, watching dolls. And just a few hours before his death, witnesses say Don Julián had placed a new doll on the tree beside that canal, his final offering, almost as if he knew it was his time. Or worse, as if he had been warned. After his death, the island should have gone quiet, but instead, it got louder. Visitors increased, tourists, ghost hunters, skeptics. Some came for the legend, others came seeking answers. But the dolls didn't like the attention. Tour guides began reporting more activity. Voices in recordings, shadows darting between trees, dolls that vanished and reappeared somewhere else. One boatman who had known Don Julián for years said this: he gave them everything, but it still wasn't enough. Others began to suspect that the dolls had never been there to protect Don. They were there to keep him trapped, to use him, to feed off him. And when his time was up, they simply let go. The shrine still stands. The same trees, the same dolls, older now, more decayed, covered in spiders and dust. But the energy hasn't faded. It's as if the island absorbed Don Julián's soul. As if, in death, he became part of what he feared most. Some even say he's still there, watching through the eyes of the dolls, waiting. You see, legends don't always die with the man who lived them. Sometimes they begin when he does. Today, Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls, sits just an hour from the heart of Mexico City. It's a tourist destination now. People come by the boatload, laughing, snapping selfies, pointing at the strange hanging dolls like it's a carnival sideshow. But beneath the novelty, something ancient still stirs. The trees are still heavy with those toys. Molded plastic heads, shattered eyes, cracked baby faces locked in silent screams. Dolls covered in moss, weather-beaten, stained by decades of sun and sorrow. And yet, they haven't fallen. They haven't decayed completely. It's as if the island won't let them die. Tour guides give rehearsed spiels. Visitors smile nervously and leave coins or trinkets at the base of the trees. Some even bring their own dolls as offerings. But the real stories aren't in the brochures. They come from the locals who refuse to set foot on that soil. The children who grow pale when the wind shifts just right. The shamans who won't even speak the island's name aloud. There are still reports, still recordings, still whispers. A popular YouTuber filmed there in 2018. He mocked the legend, laughed at the dolls, dared them to do something. 2 days later, he posted a video, pale, shaking, eyes hollow. He said he dreamed of drowning, of tiny hands pulling him down. He deleted his channel shortly after. Coincidence? Or did the dolls finally find their voice? It raises a bigger question, one far more disturbing than spirits or curses. What if the island is not haunted? What if the island itself is the entity? What if it draws people in not to scare them, but to feed, to absorb grief, fear, curiosity, obsession? What if the dolls are not the warning, but the bait? You think you're just a visitor, that you're safe behind your camera, your laughter, your disbelief. But stories like this don't end when you leave. They follow you. They slip into your dreams. They echo in empty rooms, in the dark silence between thoughts, when you swear you're alone, but something feels off. That's the real curse. Once you've seen them, once you've heard them, they know you. So go ahead, laugh, doubt, scroll on, forget this story like it was just another creepy legend. But tonight, when your lights are out, when the silence gets too quiet, and you feel a chill that doesn't make sense, ask yourself this: was that just the wind, or did something tiny, plastic with stitched eyes, just move behind you? If this tale unsettles something inside you, good, that means you're still listening. Subscribe for more stories that leave marks you can't quite explain. Like, share, and whatever you do, never bring home a doll you didn't buy. Some things carry company.